Even as he rose to the top ranks of the church and unfurled many of the great moral and theological teachings of our day, he remained an ever approachable priest. Joining us tonight, he is James Day, author of the book Father Benedict, The Spiritual and Intellectual Legacy of Pope Benedict XVI. James, welcome. A pleasure to have you with us today. I know in your book you often refer to the late Pope as Father Benedict. I understand there was a point in his life when he wanted to go by that title. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure, yeah. It was shortly after his retirement, we learned that he wished that if he had the energy to do so, he would have preferred to have been called Father Benedict in time of his retirement. And I think it speaks to how drained he really was at the time he stepped down to not want to enforce that. But he also knew what he was doing was extremely unprecedented. But I think it speaks to wanting to be called Father Benedict shows ultimately his pastoral nature of his priesthood and of his priestly life. And so we shifted to Emeritus, which also is very Benedict. Parishes often include the name of an emeritus pastor in the bulletin. There's emeritus professors, so this is something that he's used to. So he introduced us to that as well. But ultimately, I think he just wanted to be known as simply a priest.
Yeah. And as you know, he certainly lived through a lot of dark chapters in his life, including living in Nazi Germany during World War II as a child and as an adult, and as Pope dealing with the sexual abuse crisis in the church. That said, he always seemed to have his gaze fixed on God and his beauty and love. What more can you tell us about that? And also the lesson for us all in that.
Right. He never gave up hope and throughout all of those challenges. And we see that, well, certainly in how he lived his life, but also in, say, for example, the second encyclical, Spe Salvi, and Hope We Are Saved, or his first encyclical, Deus Caritas Est, God is Love. I mean, he tells you right away, here's how to best follow the path to the Lord through faith and hope and love. So those were some of the legacies that he's left us, both in his retirement and now in his passing. So the idea of also encountering godless regimes or cults or antagonists along the way from, say, Nazi Germany on, shows his determination in keeping one's gaze fixed on Christ, which is also a word of wisdom that he's given us in Jesus of Nazareth, his first book on Christ, to keep one's gaze fixed on Christ. Don't worry about anything else. Yeah,
so important. Some say, though, the papacy was something that he never really aspired to. What was his reaction when he became Pope? And also, everything that went along with that, the media fanfare and the attention.
Right. Well, he didn't want it. And there's the old joke, the cardinal the cardinal who goes in a pope comes back out the cardinal, So, and he likened the idea when they were calling his name, they knew it was inevitable that he was going to be elected. He likened it to the thought of a guillotine coming down and striking him. So this was not something that he sought out, especially at age 78 and after a lifetime of service to the church. And yet he is a loyal son, as we mentioned earlier, a simple, humble worker in the vineyard of the Lord. And he just said, "Don't do this to me." Just like in Gethsemane, don't do this to me, but it is your will. I will continue on. So I think that's something that now leading up to the election, that media fanfare you mentioned, we saw in his the way he handled John Paul II's funeral. He celebrated that mass, which was we saw that and we said, wow, look at God's Rottweiler. Look at the head of the CDF. He's a pastor, and sure enough, here he comes. He emerges as Pope a few weeks later. So it almost seemed inevitable, even though we were going through so much trauma as a church, watching that public death of John Paul II play out. Here is Cardinal Ratzinger guiding us through it, actually very quietly, very serenely, and he would continue on as Pope, which was a great blessing.
James, almost out of time. We probably have 20 seconds or so left, but wondering quickly, any final thoughts about Pope Benedict?
I would say I'm a little envious for people who haven't discovered him yet, because if you haven't and you now's the time to look into the life of Pope Benedict XVI, and you're in for something that will transform you forever.
Well, James, great to be with you. Thank you so much for taking the time. We appreciate it.